Let us begin with a prayer. This is on page 204 of this book, The Universal Prayers, the second one on that page. Om Pita Tvam Mata Tvam Daitathanayastvam Priyasahrit Tvameva Tvam Mitram Gururasi Gatischasi Jagatam Tadiyastadvrityas Tava Parijanas Tadgatiraham Prapannaschaivam Satyahamapi Tavaeva Asmi Bharaha. Om. O Lord, Thou art the Father, Mother, Husband and Son. Thou art the dear friend, relative and teacher, and the goal of the universe. I am Thine own, Thy servant and Thy attendant. Thou art my only refuge. I have taken shelter in Thee, and verily, O Lord, does my burden rest wholly on Thee. Total Sharanagati, surrendering everything, our well-being and everything to the Lord. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. May there be peace and joy in our hearts. May there be peace and harmony amongst all beings. And may there be peace everywhere in nature. Today we begin chapter 13. After completing chapter 12, where we studied Bhakti Yoga. Now there is a transition here from 13 to 18. Up to chapter 12, that was one section of the Gita. Chapter 13, I must caution, is both very difficult and both very interesting at the same time. So we shall begin the study and see as much as we can understand. This chapter is called Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga. Three words are here. Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga. Kshetra means field. The ordinary meaning of Kshetra is field. Khet, and it becomes Khet. And Kshetrajna means knower of the field. Any word that ends with the suffix Jna means one who knows. For example, the word Shastrajna means one who knows the Shastras. One who knows everything is called a Sarvajna. So, Kshetrajna is one who knows the Kshetra. Now we have to understand what Kshetra is in the first place. In this chapter, there is one extra verse at the beginning in some editions. Generally, in most editions, the chapter begins with the Lord's explanation, Sri Bhagavana Vacha, Idam Shariram Kauntaya. From there, the chapter begins. But in some versions of the Gita, there is another chapter before that, Arjuna's question. That we don't generally study that one because it is not in all the editions. According to Vedanta, there is only one ultimate reality. There is no second thing. Ekameva Advitiyam, Upanishad says. One alone and not a second. That is Vedantic position, Vedantic view. That's what Vedanta teaches. Only Brahman, and that Brahman is infinite, eternal, unchanging, no qualities, free from attributes. That is Vedantic, the teaching of Vedanta, essence of Vedanta. Brahma Satyam. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma in the Taittiriya Upanishad it says. But though it is theoretically appealing, does not conform to our experience. We are not saying one, we are saying many. In our daily life, we see so many different things besides ourselves, other people, animals, plants, this earth, this planet, other planets, and this galaxy, other galaxy, so many things, infinite number of things we are seeing. But Vedanta says only one thing is there. How to reconcile these two positions? How to reconcile the Vedantic view that there is only one reality, Ekameva, no second, no Advitiyam, against our experience. We are saying many, not one but many. So here, to explain what we are saying, not one but many, the Sankhya philosophy comes handy. In Sankhya, the many is explained. In Vedanta, the one is ultimate truth. So according to Sankhya, there is not one but two. They call it Prakriti and Purusha. Vedanta calls it Brahman, one only. Sankhya explains our perception of our duality. We are experiencing many, many different things. That is explained by Sankhya. That's why Sankhya comes mixed up with Vedanta in the Bhagavad Gita and other scriptures. So according to Sankhya, what you are saying has to be explained. That explanation is in 13th chapter. So what we are perceiving through our senses, other people, animals, plants, this earth and everything, whole of nature, is called Prakriti or Kshetra. The Prakriti part came in the 7th chapter. 7th chapter we studied two aspects of Prakriti. Apara Prakriti, Para Prakriti. In 7th chapter, verse number 4. Verse number 4 and 5, they describe Prakriti, two aspects of Prakriti. First, Apara Prakriti, the 5 elements, and Ahankara, Buddhi, all those things. Bhumirapo nalo vayu kammano buddhirevacha ahankara iti yamme binna prakriti ashtadha. Ashtadha means 8 parts of Prakriti. Bhumi, Apa, Anala, these 5 elements with which you are familiar, Panchamahabhutas in their subtle form. And then Buddhi, intellect, which is a functional part of the mind. Minna Prakriti Rashtada, Ahankara, Buddhi. Bhumilara Ponalavaya Kammano Buddhi Revacha. Manaha, Buddhi, mind and Buddhi. Ahankara, ego. These 8 things, 5 elements and these 3 things. Mano, Buddhi, Ahankara. These 8 things constitute one part of Prakriti called Apara Prakriti. All that is what we are saying in Prakriti. We call Prakriti nature. Everything in the world is nature that is visible. That has 8 parts. And in Kshetra, the same Prakriti is described in more detail. 24 parts are there. Some more details are added. And 7th chapter, it also speaks about Apara Prakriti, Para Prakriti. Aparaya Metastwanyam, 7th chapter, verse 5. Para Prakriti means the consciousness part in us. So if you take our body, there are 2 parts. We know from experience. One part is the physical part. Body, mind, sense organs, whole body is all physical material part that changes all the time, comes and goes. As opposed to this, we also have a consciousness part in it. We are aware, we have awareness, consciousness. With that consciousness, the body functions. If the body is there without consciousness, it will not function. For the body to function, consciousness is required, and that is para prakriti. And that para prakriti, conscious part in our body, is called kshetrajna in the 13th chapter. So, to make it simple, we can understand this like this. All things in nature, including our human bodies, they have two components. The conglomerate, two components. One is a material part, body, etc. One is the consciousness part, matter and spirit. Two parts are there. Similarly, similar to the human body, all things in nature have two parts, including the sun, the star, the moon, the earth, the trees, plants, animals. They all have two parts. The physical part, which we can see with our eyes and touch and feel with sense organ, that is visible part. But not visible, present is the consciousness part. In the tree also consciousness is there. Animals also consciousness is there. In a table also consciousness is there, but it is hidden from you. So these two parts, material, spiritual, matter, spirit, matter, consciousness, these are called kshetra, kshetra. The 13th chapter. That's what we are experiencing. Vedanta says only consciousness. Satyangam anantam brahma, prajnanam brahma. Upanishad says, Mahavakya, prajnana, Brahman is consciousness. That's all there is. There is no second thing. But you are seeing second things that to be explained here. Kshetra, kshetra, explain that one. What you are seeing through sense organs is the kshetra, the physical part, material part. What you are not seeing, but which is important, makes the physical part function, is the spiritual part, consciousness part, that is called kshetrajna, one who knows. Jna means one who knows. Awareness. So that is the 13th chapter. Now we shall understand what is really kshetra, what is kshetrajna. This is the main part in this chapter. This chapter, like other chapters, has two aspects. The theoretical, philosophical part and the practical instructions. In our study, we don't emphasize the philosophical part that much, because philosophy is explanation. There's not one explanation, but many explanations are there. And they don't always agree with each other. Different views about reality, as much as the mind can understand. Instead of struggling with that, if you experience the reality, instead of trying to know it theoretically with our mind, how to gain experience? By practice, practicing various spiritual disciplines. So the practical aspect, which is called Yoga Shastra in the Gita, that is where we have to emphasize. That's what we have to emphasize. At the end of every chapter, we see a short statement. It's called the colophon. What does every chapter end with? The statement, Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Bhakti Yogo Nama Dvadashodhyaya. At the end of every chapter, this statement comes. In the statement, you will see several things. Bhagavad Gita is Upanishad. It is same as Upanishad. Bhagavad Gita is similar to Upanishad because whatever is taught in the Upanishad is contained in the Gita in simpler language. Plus, in addition, Gita contains practical instructions which Bhagavad Gita, which Upanishad does not have that much. Gita is superior because in the Upanishad only philosophy is taught. The nature of Brahman, ultimate reality, that is taught by the rishis as revealed to them, revelation. That is the important part. But that is not enough. How to know that, how to experience it, you need practical instructions. I am here today, what is the first step I should take to know Brahman? So that is what Gita supplies. What Upanishad does not give, Gita gives. That is Yoga Shastra. Adhyatma Vidya, Upanishad gives. Gita gives both Adhyatma Vidya and Yoga Shastra. Yoga Shastra means practical instructions on how to gain experience of the reality. That's the more important part. So emphasize that one. In the philosophy, there are many different views. That is sometimes helpful, sometimes confusing. So we shall not emphasize that much. Now we shall study the text. It becomes clearer as we study more and more. Things slowly become clearer in our minds. In the beginning, there may be some complications in the 13th chapter. So let us begin with the text now. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Idam Shariram Kaunteya Kshetramityavidhiyate Etadyo Vetti Tam Pravuhu Kshetragya iti tadvidaha. O Kaunteya, Sri Krishna addresses Arjuna as Kaunteya, Kunti's putra, Kunti's son. O Arjuna, idam shariram, this body, idam means this body, shariram means body. Idam shariram, this body, kshetram iti abhidiyate. Abhidiyate means it is called kshetram. Kshetram iti abhidiyate is called kshetram. This body is called kshetram. Now we'll stop there, first line. Second line goes to kshetrajna. Let us understand kshetra first. Why this body is called kshetra? The body already has so many names. Why add one more name? The body is called Deha, Sharira, like that one, Tanu, like that many bodies are there. Many words are there to indicate this body. Here one more word is introduced to indicate body. That's called kshetra. Why the body is called kshetra? Kshetra means a field. Why the body is called a field? That is, we have to understand that. There are two reasons why the body is called kshetra. Two reasons. First reason is because the body is always changing. It has a beginning and an end. All bodies, not only human bodies, all bodies, you take any body in nature, including the earth and the sun and the galaxy, they're all bodies of different types. All the bodies have a beginning and an end, and in between beginning and end, they change. These three things we have to understand. Anything that has a beginning and an end and changes in between is a body is called kshetra. Why? Because two reasons. One is ksharati iti kshetram, that which perishes. Akshara means imperishable, that we studied in the 8th chapter. Aksharam Brahma Paramam. Akshara means imperishable. Kshara means perishable. Kshetra means that which perishes. Perishes means it comes to an end at some point. Everything comes to an end at some point. That's why it's called kshetra. Ksharati iti kshetra, because it perishes. Because it stops existing at some point. We call that death for human bodies. Unpleasant, but is the truth. We all have to face it. We can't hide from the truth, though it is unpleasant. Actually, it is the best thing that can happen to us. There's another view. The longer we live, the greater we postpone our enlightenment. Life is given with the purpose of achieving enlightenment, our knowing our true nature. So that is not the end. That is a completion of one stage. Next stage will reach the higher, next higher. Anyway, that's a different topic. One reason why body is called kshetra is because it perishes, like other things in nature. Second reason why body is called kshetra is very interesting. Kshetra means a field. Field means a farmer's farm. It's called a kshetra. The farm has a farmer. Now the farmer has a farm. Sorry, the farmer has a farm, and that farm is called kshetra, field. What happens in the kshetra? Exactly same thing happens in the body. It's interesting observation. What happens in the field? The farmer who owns the field, he prepares the field at certain time part of the year, plows it and puts seeds in it. Plows and sows seeds in the field. Is one part, something that happens in the field. Seeds are sown. After some time, if there is enough rainfall and the adequate rainfall at the right time, the seeds sprout and become plants and then produce the product. Whatever seed you put, that product will come. If you sow paddy, you will get rice. If you sow some vegetables, you get vegetables. If you put some vegetable seeds, you get vegetables. Like that one. Whatever seed you sow, that kind of product will come. The same thing happens in the body. How? All the actions we do, you do three kinds of actions. What are they? Actions thought in the mind, thought, thinking is action, speech, and bodily action through sense organs. All these three kinds of actions that everybody does, they are the seeds. If we plow, where do these actions happen? In the body, mind, in the kshetra. Where do the results come? Where is the harvest reaped? In the body, mind. So all the actions we do are the seeds, and all the result of actions that we experience, good and bad, they are the products of our karma. That is the harvest we reap. If you sow good deeds, means if you do good actions, good product will come, good experience will come, happiness will come. If you sow bad seeds, doing bad karma, telling lies, cheating, violence, etc., bad fruits will come. We will suffer. So suffering will come. Unpleasant result will come. So what kind of experience we get in this life and other lives also depends upon what kind of actions we do, what kind of thoughts we think, what kind of words we speak, what kind of actions we do. That determines what you experience in the body mind. All these things happen only in the body mind. All the actions happen in the body mind. All the fruits of actions, karma phala, are experienced in the body mind. This is what happens in the field. Seeds are sown, crops are reaped in the field only. That is why this body mind is called a field, kshetra, where all the actions are done, all the fruits of actions are experienced. All good, bad happens only in the body mind, not in the conscious part. That is why the body mind is called kshetra. So the first line in the 13th chapter, first verse, explains kshetra. Idam shariram kaunteya. This body, O Arjuna, kshetram ityavidiyate, is called kshetram. That's the reason why the word kshetra is used in this 13th chapter. Now, what is kshetrajna? Second line, first verse. Etadyo veti kautam prahuhu kshetrajna iti tadvidaha. Vidaha means, Veda means knowledge. Vida means one who knows, one who has knowledge. People who know this subject very well, the jnanis, what do? They call this knower of the field as kshetrajna. Etadyo veti. Etat means this body, kshetra. Ya veti, one who knows this kshetra. One who knows I am the body. See, every time you make a statement, my body is well, my body is ill, my body is hurting, my mind is clear, my mind is confused, my mind is agitated. When I say my mind, my body, who says that one? Not the body mind. Something other than the body mind points out to the body mind as the object. We objectify the body and the mind. Who is the subject? Who says my body, my mind? That knower, that that knowledge, the consciousness part in it, which says my body, my mind, that is called Kshetrajna. Jna means one who knows. Kshetrajna iti tadviduhu. Etadyo veti, one who knows. The knowing principle, the conscious principle in us is called Kshetrajna. Now we can put all these things together and simply state all our personalities have two aspects. The material physical aspect, which is called the body or Kshetra. The consciousness part, which is within us, without which we cannot function, that is the Kshetrajna, the knowing principle, conscious. Material part, spiritual consciousness part. These two things combined is the personality. All personalities have these two parts, not only human beings. That is the first part. The difference between Kshetrajna is Kshetrajna has a beginning and an end, and it changes in between the beginning and the end, and one day it perishes. These all Kshetras are subject to these three things, these changes. As opposed to this, Kshetrajna is eternal, permanent, infinite, pure consciousness. Body dies, but Kshetra, the soul, Atman, does not die. Bodies come and go. Atman stays the same. That's what we studied in the second chapter of the Gita. So that is the difference between Kshetra, Kshetrajna. That is the first part of this 13th chapter, most important part, first verse. Idam shariram kaunteya kshetramit yavidiyate etadyo vetitam prahu kshetrajna iti tadvidaha. O son of Kunti, Kaunteya, this body is called the field, Kshetra. Him who knows this field, that knowing principle in us, is its knower. He is called the Kshetrajna, the field knower. The object known and the knower, consciousness. Physical part, consciousness part. These two combined is the total person. That's what we are experiencing. Vedanta says all is Brahman. That does not satisfy us because our experience is not one, many. We are seeing the body and many different things, other bodies outside. Somebody sees this. Subject is there, object is there. So this explains the conscious part in us and the material part in us. The material part is temporary, changes, comes and goes, body, mind, etc. The consciousness part, which is called Kshetrajna, is permanent, eternal, unchanging, pure consciousness. That much you have to understand in the beginning. Then the rest of the chapter is detailed explanation of these two, and then how to experience this truth, practical instruction, what we have to actually do. Reading is not enough. Reading only gives the verbal meaning. That does not give us knowledge directly, reading or hearing. After reading or hearing, we have to do two more things to gain knowledge. According to Upanishad says, knowledge will come not by just mere reading or hearing, but by doing two more things after reading. What are they? Mananam, Nididhyasanam. This is called Shravanam. Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. Shravanam means hearing, hear with the ears, or reading. That is the first step, but not enough. Knowledge will not come by hearing, reading alone. We have to follow hearing or reading by two more steps. They are called Mananam. Second step is called Mananam. Mananam means, Manas means mind. Mananam means reflection in the mind. You have to reflect upon what we read. Read this one shloka and then think about it. Close your eyes and think, what is Kshetra, what is Kshetrajna, what's the difference? Like this, you have to, this Mananam thinking, reflection has to go on for quite some time, repeatedly, not once, iteratively. A third step is reflection has to be followed by meditation. It's called Nidhi Dhyasanam. Nidhi Dhyasanam is called meditation on this topic, on this verse that we read. This is what exactly Swami Turiyanandaji did. One of the famous disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, one of the 16 sannyasi disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, is Swami Turiyananda. He was both a yogi and a jnani and a bhakta, all, everything. So what he would do, even at a young age, before he even met Sri Ramakrishna, he had this habit of daily studying the scriptures. When he studied scriptures, he did all the 3 steps, not just reading and closing the book. I read Gita. That does not do anything. Simply reading like a novel does not do anything. Give the pride, I've read the Gita, like that feeling will come. That's not helpful. After reading every shloka, we have to reflect on. In the class, we can do only hearing, reading. But reflection meditation has to be done at home by each one of us separately, individually. Hearing can be done in a group. But reflection meditation has to be done individually by each one of us. Then only true knowledge will dawn within us. So this is the introduction. Just reading. Idam Shariram Kaunteya Kshetramityabhidiyate Etadyo Vetitam Prahu Kshetrajñachitadvidaha. This introduction to the topic, Kshetra Kshetrajña. Now the second verse contains the gist of this chapter. Who is Kshetrajña is defined here. Very, very important to our second chapter. Shankara has given a long commentary, many, many pages of commentary on the second verse of this chapter. So second shloka is Kshetrajñam chapi mam nidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. Kshetrajñam chapi mam nidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. Kshetra kshetrajñayor jnanam yattat jnanam matam mama. Very important verse. Key shloka in this chapter. Bharata, Sri Krishna addresses Arjuna in various ways using different epithets. Bharata. Arjuna is called Bharata here. Oh Arjuna, Sarva Kshetreshu. First line of second verse. In all the bodies, Kshetra means body. You have seen that one. All body, human bodies, animal bodies, inanimate bodies, everything. In all the bodies, Sarva Kshetreshu, who is the Kshetrajña? Mam Kshetrajñam Vidhi. Note that line very carefully, very important line. We contain the gist of Vedanta here. Vidhi means no, understand, samajo. Vidhi means no, understand. Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna, oh Arjuna, understand, know that Sarva Kshetreshu, in all the bodies, Mam Kshetrajñam Vidhi. Mam means me. Who is speaking? Bhagavan Sri Krishna is speaking. The Lord is speaking. He is telling Arjuna that know me, the Lord, to be the Kshetrajña in all the Kshetras. Very significant statement. Gist of Vedanta is here. One ultimate reality pervading all objects. That will come again in this chapter for more detailed study. The Lord is saying, I am the one indwelling spirit, Kshetrajña, in all the bodies. No matter what kind of body you are talking about. It may be human body, old person, young person, male, female, any nationality, any kind of wicked person, saintly person. In all the bodies, and animal bodies and plant bodies and nature, earth and sun and moon, air, water and ocean and mountain, in everything. In all these bodies, I am the one indwelling spirit. One divinity pervading everything in nature, full of nature. That is why Hindu, Sanatana Dharma people worship everything. These other people don't understand. We worship elephants, We worship animals, we worship trees. Ashwatha tree we worship, go around it 108 times. We worship the earth, we worship water, we worship rivers and mountains and everything. Because we perceive the same divine presence in all these things. We see God in all of them. That's the broadest view that Vedanta provides. God is not something separate from us sitting in the heaven, administering justice. That's the elementary view. Separate from us. That's the elementary view. Sri Ramakrishna explains these three things. He says, I am separate, God is separate. That is the beginning view, not fully, not with full knowledge, partial knowledge. I am separate, God is separate. That's one view. Then second view is, I and God are one and the same. That is difficult for others to understand. How can I be God? Vedanta says, I am Brahmasmi, I am the Brahman. That's difficult to understand even for us, because this body, mind limited, how can I be Brahman? But Vedanta says, Upanishad says, I am Brahman. That's where clarification is required. The spiritual part in us, not the physical part, not the material part, not the sense organs, flesh, bone, that's not that one. This consciousness part within every one of us. That is the divine presence within us. In that sense, all are the same Brahman. That is only one, singular. Well, the bodies are many, infinite in number and different in type, animal bodies, plant bodies, etc. The indwelling spirit in all the bodies is one and the same. That is Kshetrajna, that is Paramatma. This is the key point. This is the main point of this chapter. One divine presence pervading all kinds of bodies. In everything, God is there. In some, God's presence is clearly visible. In many, it is hidden and we don't see the God's presence. We only see the body. I give an example. If you go to a saintly person, like Sri Ramakrishna, Swamiji, Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi, or anybody like that one, saintly person, the presence of God is clearly felt. Just by being in their presence, in their ambience, makes us peaceful and calm. They radiate peace and joy, tranquility and spirituality. Without any word being said, nothing need be done. But if you go to another person, a wicked person, we feel uncomfortable. Though nothing is said or done, that very ambient presence of that person makes you feel uncomfortable. Something wrong with this person. You enter somebody's house, you don't feel good. Something wrong in this house. You get bad vibes in some place with some people. But if you go to some other house, everything is so nice and pleasant, sattvic environment, you enjoy, you like to be there, peaceful environment. What's the difference? In the kshetra, in the physical part, there is different. Mind is the one that makes difference. Wicked person's mind is full of ignorance, violence, etc. Saintly person's mind is pure, calm, experiencing divine presence. That's the difference. The difference is due to the state of the body mind only. Same kshetra is present in all the people, in all the beings, animals and plants. But in some, the awareness is more. In people, more awareness than in animals. In animals, more awareness than in plants. In plants, more awareness than in inert objects. But presence is the same. That's what this line says here in the second verse. Kshetrajnam chapi mam nidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. Then one question comes. If same God is present in the same in all beings, why people are so different from each other? Why there is so much difference? Everybody should be sattvic and nice because God is present in everybody. Why there is wickedness? That question comes. That is answered in this way. Though the God's presence is one and the same in all, as we study in more detail in this rest of the chapter, the degree to which it is manifested differs from being to being. How this is possible? Take the example of the sunlight. Sun is shining in the sky, producing same amount of heat and light on all the objects. If you go to the front yard on a sunny day, same sunlight is falling on all the objects, but all the objects, though they receive the same sunlight in the same way to the same extent, do not reflect the sunlight to the same extent. Same amount of sunlight is falling on all the objects. Some objects reflect more of the sunlight, some objects reflect less and less. You see that if you go to the front yard, there is a mulch, dull object, it reflects some sunlight. If there is a piece of glass or a mirror in the front yard, it reflects almost all this light that falls on it. Very bright object. Same amount of sunlight falls on all the objects, but some objects reflect more, some reflect less. This is because of the difference in their physical aspects. Some are highly polished, some are less polished, some are dull. People are like that. Same amount of divine presence present in all. Some people, because their minds are pure, they reflect more of God's presence. They feel and experience more God's presence, and other people also can experience more God's presence in them, because there is not much impurity covering God's presence in them. But if you go to a wicked person, same divine is present in the same way, but that person's mind is full of impurities. What are the impurities covering the divine presence? Lust, anger, greed, pride, jealousy, or violence, all those things. Those impurities cover the divine presence same presence in the wicked person, so it's not visible. You don't feel God's presence in such a person. That's how to explain the difference between beings, though the same divine is present in all. The first line here says in second verse, Sarva kshetreshu, in all the bodies, Mam kshetrajnam vidhi. I am present, know that one. If he is present and is same in all the bodies, why people are so different? Because the ability of each body means includes the mind also, Sukshma Sharira, differs from person to person in the degree to which they reflect God's presence. It's just like if there are 5 light bulbs burning, connected to the same series, same power source, 5 light bulbs. One is fully visible, maximum light is producing one sunlight, one bulb. Second bulb is covered with some layers of paper or cloth. We know there is light inside, some light is coming through, but not full light. Third bulb is covered with more of the same material, 10 layers. Not much light is coming. Light is inside burning, glowing, but you don't see. Fourth bulb, fifth bulb are fully covered with 1 foot of thick cloth or paper or cardboard, something. You don't see anything there. Same light is present in all. They're connected to the same series, same current is flowing in all. They're all producing same light. But in some it is visible, in others it is less visible, in others it is still less visible. Divine presence, like that. That's how to explain the difference in the things that we see. Some good, some bad, some very good, some very bad, sattva, rajas, and tamas. We will come to that later, the 3 gunas. So, first line of second verse, kshetrajnam chapi mam nidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. O Arjuna, know me to be the kshetrajna, indwelling spirit, in all the bodies, in all the beings. Whatever God's presence is here is also present in the sun. Upanishad says that one. Sayastayam Purushi. That's whatever is in this Purusha is also in the sun. Sa ekaha yascha sao aditya. Aditya means the sun. Whoever is little, whoever, sorry, not little, whoever is present in this body is present in the sun also. But sun is glowing so much, it is not glowing at all because the nature of the hardware. There is very powerful, lot of heat light is produced, and small sources of light are there, not much. Divine presence is same in. That is gist of this main point in this subject. This has, now you can ask the question, why do we have to worry about all these things? God is present or not in everyone, same or different. Why do we have to worry about it? Because this first line, second verse, has implications in our day-to-day life, practical implications. Some of it has already come in the earlier chapters. Why should we worry about God's presence in other people? Whether God is present or not, how does it make difference in my daily behavior? It does very significantly. That is the basis for all our relationships. My relationship with other people, my relationship with these other objects, my relationship with myself and good and bad people, with my work, all of that depends upon my understanding that the same divine is present in all. We studied that in the earlier chapters. For example, chapter 5, verse 18. There, Bhagavan Shri Krishna said, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, 5:18. Samadarshitvam, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, Brahmane Gavihastini, Sunichaiva Swapakecha, Pandita Samadarshinaha. Samadarshi means one who sees same-sighted, sees everybody alive, sees same divine in everyone. There may be good people, bad people, very worst people are the best people. Animals also. The 5:18 is a very significant verse. We studied that in great detail earlier. Vidyavani Sampane Brahmana. Brahmana means one who knows Brahman, not one who is born in Brahmin family. Just the caste system. Brahmana means one who knows Brahman. Brahmajnani, best human being. Such a person, Brahmane, endowed with Vidya Vinaya, endowed with knowledge and humility, Vinaya, not arrogance. Such a person whom we all worship and revere. And then next one is Brahmane Gavi. Go means a cow. Cow is an animal. Different kinds of animals are there. Some are sattvic, some are rajasic, some are tamasic animals are there. Also people like that. Gavi Hastini. Hasti means the elephant. Shuni means in the dog. Cow, elephant, dog, and the Brahmajnani. It's very, very different from each other. Swapaka means the worst human being, one no education, no culture, just somehow subsisting, no knowledge. Such a person, in all of these three things, in all 4, 5 things, that means in the whole of spectrum of creation, Pandita Samadarshinaha. Pandits are those who see, who are same-sighted towards all these things. When you see the worst person, they don't hate that person. No dvesha. Dveshta sarabhutanam is studied in the 12th chapter, verse 13. There is no dvesha, dislike or hatred towards the illiterate people, poor people, ignorant people, wicked people. No hatred. Studied in a previous chapter, 12th chapter, verse 13. Adveshta sarabhutana. Why? Why should we not hate wicked people, violent people? Because whether they know it or not, we know that the same God is present in all of them. They are not aware of it. Elephant is not aware that God is present in it. A tiger is not aware that God is present in it. It's a ferocious animal. So we should not go and mix with the tiger. We should not go into the tiger's den in the zoo. It will kill us. But from a distance, we should show compassion, respect to the tiger. Though it does not know, we know that God is present in the tiger. It does not know because it doesn't have the buddhi shakti that we have, people have. It's not its fault. The hardware is not good enough to know the God's presence. Hardware is body mind. God's presence is the same in all. That's what Vedanta says. That is why recognizing the same divine presence in all beings, a Jnani Bhakta must show compassion, respect to all beings, but applying common sense now carefully in applying this rule. Wicked person, don't go too close to the person. From a distance, you tell the wicked person, I know your God is in you. You don't know, you're not aware of it. So I will stay away from you. You're violent. I'm not going to get close to you. But I will not disrespect you or hate you. The time will come and you will know, but that has not come yet for you. So from a distance, we bow down. This parable, Sri Ramakrishna explained it with a parable. Many of you have read that parable. In a Gurukulam means a teacher's family hermitage in a forest where boys go there to learn. All type of school, hermitage. The boys will stay as residents in the teacher's home. Teacher and his wife take care of the boys and give them instruction for some years. This is a Gurukula. The teacher used to give the same instruction. God is present in all. You should practice Samadarshitva, same-sightedness, like that. So after the class, every day the boys used to go to the forest to their assigned chores. Some boys used to collect firewood, some used to collect water, some used to do the gardening, some used to help in cooking, like that, after a morning class. So one day, some boys went to collect the firewood in the forest, firewood for cooking and fire ceremony, Agnihotra. A wild elephant came in the forest. The Mahout was sitting on the elephant. The Mahout was trying to control the elephant, but the elephant would not obey the Mahout because turning here and there, pulling everything. So all the boys ran away to safety. And Mahout was crying, shouting, wild elephant, get out of the way, get out of the way. All the boys heard and they saw the elephant coming, they ran away and hid for safety in different parts. One boy did not go. He stood there, right in the path of the oncoming wild elephant. And he thought, God, our teacher says every day God is present in all, in the same way in animals and plants too. So God must be present in the elephant also. So I shall bow down to the God in the elephant Narayana. So the boy stood there trying to do namaskar to the wild elephant. The wild elephant does not know anything about that. It's an elephant. God is present, but it doesn't have the buddhi, the power to know presence of God. So the elephant saw the boy in its path, took the boy in his trunk and threw him aside and went away. Wild elephant does not know what it is doing. The boy was injured. Then after the elephant went away, all the other boys came and took him to the teacher's home. The teacher and his wife treated him and he came back to consciousness. And after some time, the teacher asked the boy, why didn't you run away to safety when the wild elephant was coming, like other boys did? The boy says, sir, every day you say in the class that God is present in all, including animals. So I was trying to pray to the God in the elephant. It drew me aside. Then the teacher said, the elephant Mahout was also asking you to get out of the way. In the Mahout also, the same God was present. Why didn't you pay attention to the God's word in the Mahout? Mahout, God is present. Is the Mahout also? Why didn't you pay attention to him? You say, oh, you saw only God in the elephant, but not in the Mahout. He's present in all. You should have paid attention to the Mahout's words. God was telling you to move away. So in applying the role, Samadarshitva, we have to apply that carefully with common sense. You have to stay away from wicked people, animals, ferocious animals. From a distance, we should recognize God's presence in them, but not get too close to them because they don't know God or anything about God. Narada Maharshi, in his devotional aphorism, says one very interesting sutra is there. Aphorism is many if you study Narada Bhakti sutras here. There he says, extolling the importance of holy company, satsanga. He says it is as important to stay away from wicked people as it is to associate with holy people. So he says, Dussangaha Sarvathaiva Tyajaha. Dusanga means company of evil people, wicked people. You should stay away from wicked people as much as possible. Don't wicked, but don't hate them. Adveshtasvara Bhutanam, 12:13. You combine all these things. You should not take one line and say, that is all. We should take all the things, combine them, integrate them, then we get clear knowledge. So we know hatred, but from a distance, we should show respect and say, I don't hate you. You're a wicked person. You're a cruel, you're a ferocious animal, tiger or lion. From a distance, I show respect to you. You stay there, I'll stay on this side of the fence. Like that. That is how we should recognize divine presence in all beings, including inanimate beings. Even when we deal with inanimate objects like a table, furniture, or whatever, or book, or whatever, or door, you have to be gentle. They also have feeling. They will not be able to express in a way we understand. Animals also. Animals are very sensitive. Dogs and cats and other animals, they all have the same feeling as we have, but they can't express in the way we can understand. We should be gentle and compassionate. If they are ferocious animals, stay away from them. Don't get close to them. So that's why when we deal with inanimate objects, we have to deal with them gently, like keeping the book. I told you a personal small incident, nothing significant, happened many years ago when I was a student. Nothing big, but there was a big message behind that one. I was reading a book when one visitor came to our family. I was reading some book. When a visitor was a scholar, Vedic scholar. So he looked at me, I greeted him, and he kept the book on the table and started talking to him. And after some time, that visitor told me, see, that book that you're reading when I came, you kept it like this. It should be kept like this. I kept it upside down and told me keep it facing up. Not a big thing, what a great news. Not a very significant thing. But behind what he said was this message. He was telling me actually what Gita is telling. Krishna is telling us now. He says, even in this inanimate object, a book, the same consciousness is present as it is within me and you and other beings. So you have to treat it gently, kindly, nicely, whether it is closing a door or keeping a book or anything. In the Holy Mother's household, you remember that incident from Holy Mother's life. One day, a lady devotee staying with the Holy Mother swept the floor using a broom. No, in India, there are no vacuum cleaners for villages, etc. Now there may be. That time, there was no electricity. You had to sweep the floor with a broom, jhadu. So that lady swept the floor and put the broomstick aside carelessly in some place. She threw it away. Mother washed this one. She called and told the lady gently, see, in that broomstick also, same divine is present. After using it, you should keep it safely, nicely in its assigned place. Keep it in the assigned place. Why? Two reasons. One reason is sheer expediency, convenience. Next time when you want to use the broom, you don't have to search for the broom all over the place. Where is the broom? Where is the broom? Abbreviation. Predictably, it should be found in the same place. So keep it in the same place. One reason, convenience. Second reason is more significant. In the broom also, the same divine presence is there as it is in you and me. It may not be able to manifest, express divine presence in it, the broom is an inanimate object, but God's presence is there nonetheless. We have to recognize divine presence in the broom also and treat it gently as you would treat a person with the same kindness, with the same gentleness. Just listen here. That's the first line of the second verse is all these implications hidden in it. If we recognize God's presence in all and everything, then our behavior towards all and everything must change. That's why Sri Krishna again and again in a 5th chapter, 6th chapter, verse number 9, 518, 6:9, there Bhagavan emphasizes samadharshitvam, same-sightedness. Chapter 6, verse 9, sadhusvapicha papeshu samabuddhir vishishyate. Sadhu means a holy person, does not do anything wrong, at least should not do anything wrong. Papi means a person who does papa karma, evil deeds. In all of them, sadhusvapicha papeshu samabuddhihi. A devotee or a jnani must treat them all equally, but with care, with carefulness, as dealing with an animal or a tiger. Be aware, stay away from show respect, but no hatred, only compassion and love. With people, good people, you can associate very closely, holy company. They are very holy people. They know God, they know God's presence, they are experiencing God's presence. If you associate with them, we also get the same quality. We get the same quality of the people with whom we associate. Wicked people, bad qualities will come to us. Good people, good qualities will come to us. That's why Sri Ramakrishna again and again says, cultivate holy company is good for us. All these things are included in this second verse, first line. Kshetrajnam chapimam nidhi sarvakshetreshu bharata. Though it is late, I'm going to tell one more small incident about how to apply this in our daily lives. Swami Turiyananda, when he was a young man, known as Harinath Chattopadhyay, he went to see Sri Ramakrishna in Dakshineshwar. Sri Ramakrishna told him, Hari, some people came here to Dakshineshwar this morning to do picnic. They borrowed a knife from here. The picnic people had forgotten to bring a knife. They came and asked for a knife. I gave it to them. And they said they will bring it back and give it to me in the evening before leaving, but they have not given so far. Please go and see whether they are still there, what happened to the knife. So Hari went to the picnic spot. The knife was lying there, used but not clean, and they had left. They forgot to clean it and give it back to Thakur. So Hari cleaned it and brought it back to Thakur's room, kept it somewhere. Sri Ramakrishna gently told him, Hari, that is not the place where I keep the knife. I keep the knives here, pointing to a spot. That's where it has to be kept. Not a big deal. The reason is, those days there was no electricity. Now at night, if one finds something, you switch the switch, without getting up from bed, we can flip the switch and light will come. That was not there those days. So in darkness, if Sri Ramakrishna wanted to find something, you have to know where to find it. Convenience in a predictable place. So everything has to be treated gently, nicely, inanimate objects, kept in its proper place, cleaned before, clean after using it. That these are all the implications of seeing same divine presence in all, not only in people, animals, plants, and animate objects. Kshetrajnam chapimam nidhi sarvakshetreshu bharata. We'll continue this study next time, very important chapter. And in this 13th chapter, a lot of instructions are given on how to cultivate this awareness of God in other people. We know God is present, but we are not feeling God's presence in anybody, only seeing the bodies and minds. How to actually cultivate God's presence in everybody, everything, that instructions are given here in this chapter, verses 7 to 11. We'll study that when we get to that chapter, the shloka, the 5 shlokas, 7 to 11 in this chapter. Now we shall close with a closing prayer. So this. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may all be happy. May all be free from diseases and other problems. May all realize what is noble and auspicious. May no one be subject to misery. Om peace. May there be peace and joy in our hearts. Adhyatmika Shanti. May there be peace and harmony amongst all beings. Adi Bhautika Shanti. And may there be peace everywhere in nature. Adi Daivika Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sarvam Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Thank you all. And if you have questions, you can.
Maharaj, thank you.
You know, yes, I have Debashish asked me.
Yeah, I also have one question after he finishes, Swamiji.
Okay. Now, Debashish.
You're on mute.
Unmute yourself.
Now?
Yes, better.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, good. I was Pranam Swamiji. It's beautiful,
Namaskar.
beautiful talk, beautiful explanation that you did today. I have a question. You know, you mentioned at the very beginning, Brahman is consciousness in Vedanta, right? And then in the Sankhya, you have Prakriti and Purush.
Purusha.
So that means when we say Brahman is consciousness, so it implies both Prakriti and Purush in the Vedanta way, right?
In Sankhya Prakriti Purusha.
Yes, but when in Vedanta it says only consciousness. Or
Yeah, only Brahman, which is consciousness.
Consciousness. That means consciousness is actually Purush plus Prakriti.
Yeah, Prakriti is explained as why Prakriti means all this world we are seeing, whatever we are seeing, objects. From where does it come? If only Brahman is there, that's the question. So there are many explanations about how the world has come into existence. Those explanations are many. Some philosophers say the world, that means Prakriti, does not exist at all. Ajatavada. But we are seeing, they say you are seeing like a dream or like a rope in a snake. It's not there, but it is appears to be real to us when you are seeing it, but it is not there. Like a snake being seen in a rope. We are not seeing rope, we are seeing the snake. It's frightening. So we yell and scream, oh, snake, like that one. Because there is no snake at all in reality, but you are seeing it. Why? That is due to ignorance, avidya, or maya. If Brahman alone, where did maya come from? Maya causes this ignorance. That explanation is not given there in the scripture. Vivekachudamani Shankara says maya cannot be explained from where it came, how it came. That is inexplicable. Even it's the power of Brahman. Brahman's power is maya. Maya causes the world and appearance of the world and ignorance and everything. Why? There is no answer to the why question. Some people say it is, devotee says it is bhakta, the bhakta says it is leela, Daivi leela. God wants to play. Sri Ramakrishna gave that explanation. Why the world is there, full of suffering, people suffering, everybody suffering.
Yeah.
And that question was asked. Sri Ramakrishna said, it is God's will. He says Divine Mother's will. Divine Mother wants to have this play of hide and seek. In hide and seek game, children are blindfolded, but they have to touch the leader, the grandmother running. And those few children who touch her, they are released. Their blindfold is removed and they are out of the game. They have knowledge. And those other children who are still with the blindfold, they are running here and there looking for the mother, but they can't touch her. Why this game should continue? It's for suffering for us. The devotee asked Sri Ramakrishna, inquire who you are. And second thing he says is, it is the Divine Mother's will that this game should continue. It's her will. She will continue the world creation. All these things that we are seeing, good, bad, pain, pleasure, everything, that is her will. Divine play. Daivi Leela, that is Bhakta's explanation. Jnani say there is no world at all, but I'm seeing it. You are seeing like snake, there is no snake. Only Brahman is there, only rope is there. That's Jnani's explanation. Like this, many explanations are given, and whichever explanation appeals to you, you can accept it. Otherwise, there is it cannot give explanation cannot give full knowledge. Explanation cannot give knowledge. It only temporarily answers some question that is solved. How do we get knowledge of the truth of reality? Follow the instructions given in this chapter 7 to 11. By doing those things, Sri Krishna asks us to do, we get knowledge. True knowledge comes by this spiritual practice, not by reading books. The Upanishad itself says reading books will not give you knowledge. At the same time, Upanishad says we have to have Svadhyaya every day. That Upanishad says every day you have to do Svadhyaya, Svadhyaya ma pramadaha. Then Kathopanishad says Svadhyaya pravachanena nalabhyat, ayamatma pravachanena nalabhyaha, nayamatma pravachanena labhyaha. By pravachana, explanation, reading, etc., Atman cannot be known. So what is the solution? One time it says you read scripture every day. Other place it says no, scripture will not give you knowledge of Brahman.
We don't have that much time.
How to understand? Sri Ramakrishna gives the explanation. Narada gives the explanation. He says you have to read the book, scripture, but that's not the end. That won't give you knowledge. What gives knowledge? Putting into practice what the scriptures ask us to do. So I explain that with a parable. A letter came to a man from a village, friend.
Right.
Letter says give one share, send 1 share of sandesh, 5 share of sandesh, 1 dhoti. So that is purpose of letter. If you keep on reading a letter, nothing will happen. That man is waiting there. Read the letter, put it aside, go to the bazaar, bring the sandesh and dhoti, send it to him. So reading scripture is like reading a letter. That will not help us to only know. It will only let us know what to do, how to reach the goal. Then you have to put the book aside and plunge into practice, do what the scriptures ask us to do. Daily sadhana. That will give us knowledge and realization.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other question?
Yeah, I have another.
Swamiji, I had one. Go ahead, Debashis ji.
Oh, sorry. One other points. Maybe we can explain more next time. So the fact that we all have different strength, different power, although we have all the
Same divine presence.
Same divine. Now the question then begets, that why some people have this power and others don't. So how do you explain that? Or I understand genetically someone is a little bit different and all this, but if we really try to go by this, the way you explaining, is there a way to explain that?
Swamiji said, Vedanta says the same power is present in all. Infinite power is hidden within us all, each one of us.
Right.
But some of us can bring it out, manifest more, some less. But everybody can manifest the full 100% power and become one with the divine. That's our destiny. We do that one. Some are doing it slowly, some are doing it a little bit later they began. So everyone is different. We are in different stages of our journey. Some are beginning the journey, some are in the middle, some are close to the end. Like a 4-year college. Some are in the first semester of the first year, freshman year. Some are going to graduate at the end of this semester. Some are in between, second year, third year, freshman, sophomore, like that. So everybody is traveling toward the same goal of realization, but not at the same point. Now we are not at the same point in the journey. That's one way to explain the difference from person to person.
Yeah, thank you.
The next, somebody.
Swamiji, sorry to delay. I know it's very late already.
No problem.
My question is, if you have never seen a person and the person lives miles and miles and miles apart, but the person died and is related to you, do you have to still follow those things of not going for a religious function for 3 days?
There are rules about this in the Smriti Granthas, Manusmriti, other sutras. They are for householders, they have some rules. It depends upon the tradition and the relationship. Close relationships, close blood relation, they have to observe all the rules completely. 10 days, Ashocha, all those things. But an unknown person, different person, you just pray for the person. That is all. There's no rules regarding
Well,
that.
even if it's a relative, but you have never seen the relative in your life, and they're in different country and you're in different country, you still have to follow,
No, you have to pray for them. That's all. There's no ritual required.
even if they're relative.
Even if they're related,
Yeah.
then relationship, then you have to do something. I don't know how much. For some 3 days, some 10 days, for some 1 day, for some only a bath. A different rules depending on the degree of relationship.
Okay, Swamiji. Thank you.
The priest and the temple can give you more information. They study all these scriptures about rituals and rules.
Okay, Swamiji. I mean, in those days, everyone used to live in a village, and so whole village used to celebrate. Now,
Yeah, now
they're
things are
thousands of
different.
miles apart. Yeah. So the concept of a Saucham doesn't exist, right? I don't know.
Not in the same way as before.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Swamiji.
Okay, all of you stay well. And God willing, we shall meet you next week.